the opportunity. We have the opportunity here to interview the people behind the new Avora Lumina, and this is something new for us. Aaron and I co-host the Live at Sea Facebook group, and this will be recorded, so there'll be an opportunity to see this in the future. If you missed it, or if you want to go back to it and see it again, I'm Colin C. Campbell. I am a best-selling author, award-winning author, and also an avid cruiser who one day wants to live on a cruise ship. And Aaron, if you could just introduce yourself real quickly, and then we'll jump right into questions.
My name is Aaron Alexander. I don't use a middle initial like Colin. Just like Colin, though, it's a dream one day to live on a cruise ship. Currently retired. So hopefully it works for us sooner than later with the wife.
Absolutely. And that initial came from Forbes. They required me to take it because there were too many Colin Campbells in this world. All right, sounds good. I'm going to hit it off with the first question.
Well, hang on 1 second, Colin. Can I just go over, you guys should all be able to see just some guidelines. If you hit new chat and you can email, text, or send a message to either Colin or myself of your question. The reason we're doing that is there's a lot of people coming in. We just want to preview the questions, and then Colin and I will ask them, and we'll give you guys credit for it. If there's any questions on how it works or anything like that, please, message me. So go ahead, Colin. Go ahead with the first question.
To ask a question, Aaron, right? Someone's got at the search bar on the bottom, there's a chat button. They click the chat button, correct?
Yes.
And then they message who? They message
either you or I. It doesn't matter. You can do me.
Yeah, message Aaron. We'll go through Aaron on that one, and then we'll rephrase the question when we get it. So again, it's right at the very bottom of your Zoom screen. If you're not used to Zoom, there's a chat button. You can ask the question there. I'll kick it off here with why the Seven Seas Regent ship. Like, why did you choose this ship in particular to be a conversion from an ultra luxury ship to a residential ship?
Well, it's a proven platform, right? It's known as having some of the best service and the finest food in the industry. So we wanted to start with that proven platform, and it's kind of the ideal size for what we're doing. We didn't want to convert a large ship. Gets a little crowded, and just the logistics of that are a little more difficult. This is the perfect ship to get into a lot of the ports that the larger ships just can't get to, whether it's Bordeaux in France or Montreal or similar places. So it's just kind of ideal. It just kind of works.
Yeah, I noticed. Sorry, I just want to follow up there, but I've stayed on the Regent cruise ships, and very similar room to this, the ones that you have on this ship. And for me, it seemed like almost every room in that ship was a suite. And typically, when you see a lot of these cruise ships, they tend not to be like that. The other thing I reported in the article that I wrote about it, because I was on the ship, was the laundry room. And even though laundry is included, a lot of people like to do a little bit of their own laundry. I'll say that, especially my wife. So it seems to me that particular ship was well suited for conversion to residential because every room on the ship was a suite, or is a suite.
Not only that, every deck has a laundry room. Right. So that's helpful.
Yeah. Or as Regent refers to them, laundrettes. Laundrettes. Yes. But yeah, it's a unique ship. Another one of the reasons we picked this particular ship is because, the smallest residence is 300 square feet, right? It's got a full-size bathroom, separate tub and shower. It's got a walk-in closet. And you're right, Colin, a lot of the cruise ships built today or even previously, they have cabins that start about 180 square feet, no walk-in closet, those tiny cruise ship bathrooms. So this was just an ideal platform for us to convert because of that.
Well, I know what my wife likes. She loves the fact that the suites, the ones that we stayed on had a bathtub and a shower. She just loves that. I'm just saying. But all right, Aaron, you're up next for the question.
All right. So give me an idea of the expected life expectancy and age of the hull that you guys figured out during the inspection. So in other words, how long is this ship going to last? You're saying what, life of ship.
Yeah,
It was built in 1991, 1997. I think it got turned into a cruise ship.
98.
99. Yeah.
It was the construction was mostly in 98. They completely rebuilt it from a Russian surveillance ship to a cruise ship. I mean, it's got very little bearing on how long a ship will last. A ship will last as long as you maintain it. This ship has been maintained by a public cruise line for the last, at least 20, almost 30 years, 28 years. So it'll last another 30 years if it's well maintained. We estimate the life to be 20 years. Guarantee it for 15.
Guarantee. Okay, so that's the first I've heard. Explain to me a guarantee for 15. What does that mean?
So if the ship, for one reason or another, is unable to go before the 15 years, there's a prorated refund.
Okay.
So can I follow up on, and by the way, if you're in the audience here, just and I know a lot of new people have come in, on the bottom there's a chat button, and if you have a question, please just send that chat to Aaron Alexander, and we'll ask the question here. We have a lot of people on, so we're just trying to manage this carefully. But I'm going to have a little bit of a follow-up, because in our Live at Sea Facebook group, we had a lot of people asking about this 9-year lease or 9-year agreement with NCL, Norwegian Cruise Lines, and then a nominal purchase at the end of that 9-year period. But yet you're selling life of vessel rooms. Like if you buy the room, you get it for the life of the vessel, but you only have a 9-year period in contract with them, and then a nominal buyout. Can you explain how that's all works and connects from not necessarily from your side, but more from someone who buys a unit on your ship?
Yeah, I'd be happy to. We got a great. I mean, this is a ship financing is a complicated process, and we've gone through with Norwegian for about 4 months the financing process of the Lumina. We have a 9-year time span where we put down a deposit, and then we put in annual amount for the 9 years, so the duration of the bareboat hire to purchase. So specifically, we put in about 20 million down, and then anywhere from 12 to $8 million a year, and a purchase price at the end of I think it's 10 million. It's part of the last year of the charter hire. So it's a 9-year. It's basically a 9-year financing. So with a $20 million down payment. So for us, the risk, the cash flow risk is night and day compared to with what we had to do with the Odyssey. We paid Odyssey in full, and then we spent another $22 million in dry dock. This is completely the opposite. This is more than 80% financed, effectively financed. It's an operational bareboat hire to purchase, but we're able to leverage $250 million of sales with $110 million worth of payments over 9 years.
Got it. So at the end of 9 years, what happens to the ship?
We take possession of it.
So that's why you're saying life of vessel, because what happens is the person buys the room, and at the end of 9 years, you will make that nominal payment and own the ship 100%.
Yeah, that's right. So when we negotiated this, the nominal payment at the end was $1 million. but that 1 million is wrapped up with the final charter payment, and so they combine the final charter payment with the 1 million and just made it 10 million.
Yeah, I don't foresee a circumstance where you wouldn't pay the $1 million. If you paid 100 million for a ship,
No.
you're not going to pay the 1 million.
I'll pay it for you.
Yeah, there you go. We'll lock up 100 million.
Yeah.
All right, so it is life of vessel, and there's nothing. It's 100% life of vessel. That when you buy a room, you get it for more than 9 years. You get it for life of vessel.
Yeah, no, 100%.
Yeah, good. Aaron, you're up next.
So I'm going to go on with that. I just lost my train of thought because I copied something over to you. Can you explain to us what the turnover looks like from Regent of the ship, from Regent to you? My understanding is they have a dry dock coming up. So what does the turnover look like? Is it, can you give me an idea of that?
Yeah, I can do it. Kathy, you want to take it?
No, you can do it.
No?
Go ahead.
Okay. So the ship is going into dry dock now on October the 16th in, I think it's Marseille, or I think it's Marseille, Genoa maybe.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and me and Kathy will be at that dry dock and make sure that everything is done to standards. Then they will put again the ship into dry dock in and around December 15th in Setúbal, Portugal. They will be responsible for docking the vessel, and they will be responsible for checking with class to make sure there are no conditions of class and that the ship is in workable condition.
Okay, I don't know what class is or condition of class. So help me out with
Kathy,
that.
you can take that.
Okay, so whenever there's any discrepancies with the vessel class, a class society is basically who dictates when you can sail. Okay, so usually you have all your certifications in order to be able to sail. Okay, so class society is the one who dictates those certifications and signs off on them. Just to reiterate what Mike said, the first dry dock, which is still going to be an NCL dry dock, is happening this year. And we were invited to go to the dry dock, which is great because it allows us to look and get a full scope of what we're taking on. It's like an introduction to everything related to the ship, all the insides and all the details, the infrastructure of the ship. So this is a fantastic opportunity for us to start planning. It's not just Mike and I that are coming, but our IT director will be there too. We have our supply chain director. So we have a team of Avora people that will be on board and working collaboratively with them. Then once they're done with that dry dock, then the following dry dock, which is the one in December 2027, that's kind of the handover. So they're going to be responsible for putting it in the dry dock. And then we'll go through the final checklist, make sure she's healthy. And then it'll be turned over to us. And then we'll also, during that dry dock, we're going to make modifications to the ship. For example, building out the business center and, doing modifications to cabins as the residents would like, and a few other modifications to the ship that should be, well and done within that time frame before we sail.
Are the modifications one to modernize the ship with any, anything that it's required? And then also, when it goes into dry dock, before you guys take possession, I'm sure that they do their inspection. I'm sure, are they responsible for repairing everything to?
Yes, correct. So
and then you've got a perfectly working ship?
Right, exactly. So this first one that belongs to them is kind of like an outlook of the health of the ship. So if there's some outstanding items by class, it could be something as simple as replacing, some equipment that's outdated or anything of that nature. They will handle that from their end because it's still their dry dock, right? Mm-hmm. And so by the time we get the ship is going to be free and clear of any anything that is pending from a class society perspective.
So in theory, that should prevent any issues leaving, whatever date you're choosing to start your ship, unlike
Absolutely.
your
And I know why
previous ship,
I
you
know
know
why
what
you're
you're,
saying that, and I don't know if
yeah.
I want to explain a little bit the difference between what happened with Odyssey and what's happening with Navigator. Just briefly, Odyssey was dormant. She was in layup, and so all her certifications had expired. So it took us a little bit longer than we anticipated. We were a little ambitious with our set date because those certifications take a long time, and bringing a ship back to life takes a while. With Navigator, she's already sailing, right? So it's kind of like going into a car dealer, getting the keys and driving off, just to put it simply. She's in wonderful shape. She's been very well maintained, very well taken care of. She's absolutely beautiful right now. So there's very minimal work to do to her other than, kind of remove the casino, for example, not really residential, and replace it with like a business center, for example. And then we might make a few modifications to different public spaces. And then, like I said, if a resident wants to combine cabins or do some changes, that would be the best time to make those modifications.
We have our first question, which is good. That's not from Colin and I. Andrea's asking if they have a private conversation with you guys, and they put you on a list, will it put you on a list that precludes them from future direct leasing or purchasing from a resident? So if they go through a sales presentation with you guys, will that preclude them in the future from renting or purchasing from a resident?
No.
That model is a little bit different. They're comparing it to an Odyssey model. It's going to be completely different. I'll let Mike, explain if he wants a little bit more, but
Yeah, no, look, this stems from the Odyssey, where the rental pool is much more significant than it will be on Avora. We don't actually offer any rentals on Avora. The Avora rentals will just be the approved residence rentals that'll be out there through a third party. So the challenges that we've had with us sending prospects to the ship through our try before you buy program, and them signing up instead with residents on board, that issue doesn't exist. So there's no need to have any sort of policy in place that prevents any sort of thing.
So earlier I mentioned that I had traveled on these ultra luxury ships, the Regent ones, and honestly, it was phenomenal. It was like I've done a lot of these Royal Caribbeans and family and stuff. When my wife and I went on that, it was just incredible. The food was outstanding. The service was outstanding. They got to know your name, and it was we were only on for 10 days at the time, if I remember correct. It was in Europe. In your press release, you talked a little bit about maintaining that sort of culture, the quality. Can you talk to that at all right now? I don't know if you have an agreement with NCL or Apollo Group or whatever, but is that the intent, to try to use the current staff that provides those services?
Well, yes, we plan on using the same hotel management company, which also handles the food and beverage services. Our goal is to maintain the level of service and the level of food quality that's currently on the ship. So a lot of, so having the same company that handles it now handle it for us is the most logical choice for us. And we are in negotiations to make that happen.
yeah, and to
I'll
speak
tell you,
of
as a customer of the Regent, it is phenomenal.
Yeah, but to speak of what you say, that is to show that the management company that Regent uses is exceptional. They're 6-star. But, in terms of what you mentioned about, learning the names and things like that, that comes automatically with the community. One thing we've learned, with the residential now with Odyssey is that, they become like a family and crew becomes like a family. So that learning your name, it will be common, because you see you see those people often, and this becomes a very close-knit group. It's a nice group, and it's a nice, also, camaraderie with the crew themselves as well, because they have these long contracts, 9-month contracts sometimes, and it feels like home for them, because not only do they learn the residents' names, the resident learns their names. There's a nice little relationship there, and that becomes, that's a big deal for the residents.
Yeah, and I will also add that this ship did launch in 1999. It took a while to construct, and that it was redone. A $40 million refurbishment was done in 2016.
Right.
And I didn't feel like when I came on that ship, it was a ship from the 1999. It felt like it was a ship that was relatively new and modern. Now, when you take it over, it'll be 2028. So it'll be 12 years since that renovation. I just think that's interesting. And are there other renovations? You talked about changing from the casino to the workspaces. Thank you. I do want to continue to work on board if I were to go down the path of Lumina. But are there other changes that you're talking about making to? Not to say you need to make a lot. I mean, it's a phenomenal boat right now.
So
Yeah, look, I mean, let me take this. Look, the business center is probably the biggest public area. When you go around this ship, there's no sign of any wear and tear at all. The carpets look brand new. The rooms are in like perfect condition. As of right now, there's really nothing that we need to do with the rooms, or the carpets, or anything like that. Now, there's 2 years between now and we take delivery. And so will there be areas when we inspect the ship in dry dock, or a year and a half from now, that we will replace carpets and that we will do some maintenance within the rooms and so forth? Yeah, absolutely. We'll be doing some of that, and we've set money aside to do that. But the majority of the work that we expect to see in dry dock will be the business center, the and cabin combinations and customizations of residents. That's where we'll focus.
And it truly is a different experience because you're living on board. And I can imagine that you would make other changes. Like, for instance, do you really need as many bars on the ship? Or the shop, do you really want to be selling Gucci watches or whatever, handbags?
Yeah.
Or is there a little, marketplace to buy some vegetables or something? I don't know. Or was there a place to cook your own food that might be on board? Like, it's a different. I'm not saying you have resolved all these questions now, but I would imagine it would be quite a different experience than the one I went on as a vacation. This is a lifestyle choice that you'd be making, and in that lifestyle, it's home. It's not a vacation, and that's just a different way of thinking.
Yeah, and you're right about the shops, Colin. People don't typically want to shop on board. They'd rather shop in ports for things they need. And, there's going to be a significantly fewer amount of people on board at any given time because, the ship holds 500 people. What we found with Odyssey is that half the residences are filled with couples and half are filled with singles. So it's going to be about 2/3 of the people on board. So the shops really won't be necessary. And we do get a lot of people requesting the business center and private offices. So that's going to be our main focus. A lot of money is going to go into developing that and having the latest and greatest communication tools on board as well for both Wi-Fi and telephone communications.
And as we build the community and as it grows and as we start selling, we will open up a community chat where people can say what their interests are, because we have a 2-year runway, right? And there's a lot of ideas that people have. For example, it was a big deal to have a pickleball. And people were, on Odyssey, and they were like, I will not sign the contract unless I know for sure you're going to have a pickleball. And it's been successful. Pickleball has been great. There's tournaments, there's plenty of people playing all the time, and it was worth the investment because it's something that people really enjoy. So, right now I believe they have what is it, like a mini golf. We're still contemplating if we're going to keep it, we're going to put something else there. So we have time, to create and to, anybody, that's interested will say, hey, what about this? And we can look into it.
So what
And
you're
it'll be a
saying is
community.
residents have, before the ship gets turned over, residents will have some input into what you guys are doing to the ship.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, right now we're just begun, right? We're just getting started. We're just getting the interest. We're just starting to get sold. In 6, 8 months from now, it's going to look much different. We're going to have a lot of residents that are going to be looking forward to joining. They're going to have a year to say, okay, how do I want to design my cabin? What is it that I want to do? What are my interests? All of those things become a community effort. And we'll be having those discussions on what we can do with certain spaces on the ship. I mean, at the end of the day, it's going to be your home, right? And that's how we built Odyssey. Believe it or not, maybe we have too many bars, but maybe that's not a bad thing. People like to congregate in different places and in different areas. It's not just to say to drink, but to socialize. And there's a lot of group events. There's a lot of clubs, that they look for certain areas. To get together, so I'm looking forward to seeing what the residents are looking forward to having.
One thing I will say,
Back to the staff question. Are you hoping? I'm sure you're hoping to keep the captain on board. Is that something that you discuss with Norwegian? Or are they going to take him away, or Regent? Or are they going to take him and assign him somewhere else?
The captain, that's an interesting question because we don't know the captain well. And the captain actually belongs to Norwegian. So just to give a little bit of insider information, the hotel crew belongs to the management company, but the deck and engine crew, which includes the captain, belong to NCL. So chances are the deck and engine team will likely want to stay with NCL. So we would have new crew, and even the Odyssey crew, maybe our captain will want to do a couple contracts on Avora. And now that we're scaling, they can, maybe do Odyssey for 3 months, take a break, and then do Lumina for 3 months. So, that's an option. But right now, we don't know the captain that well, and we don't his feelings are. Once we start visiting the ship more often, I would guess that he would want to stay with NCL, and that's okay, depending on his history and depending on how long he's been. So, we'll have new faces, and that's okay. Or we'll have some faces from Odyssey that'll want to spend some time on Lumina.
I mean, I can see a new captain, but from the engine standpoint and the ship itself, I mean, a chief engineer, I would hope that you could entice, because they kind of know where the bodies are buried.
Well, what's funny that you mentioned that.
I'm not mechanical, by the way.
Well, no, but you're absolutely right. And one of the nice things, we've already met with NCL, and they're very forthcoming, and they're looking at this as a partnership, which is very refreshing for us. And one of the things that they did say were that they would be happy for the chief engineer to stay for as long as we'd like, and then eventually for as long as he'd like. So yeah, we did meet with the chief the first time. He's a great guy, very smart. It's nice that he's going to be with us for a little bit longer after we sail, because he knows the ship well. Whether he'll stay, yeah, it's an enticement. Let's see if he's interested in the residential model.
I mean, look, we went through this somewhat, at least with Fred Olson. There was everyone had basically the option of whether they wanted to stay with the ship or if they wanted to go to another ship within Fred Olson. And there were people that had been, there was one person on the engine side who had been with the ship for like 18 years and would rather die than not come with the ship. So he there was no question he was coming with a ship. And there was several engineers, second engineer wanted to stay with the ship. Both chief engineers had, they had very good retirement, with Fred Olson that we just simply couldn't compete with. And so I think every person in the engine side is going to have to make that determination, right? How long have they been with the ship? How close are they to retirement? How vested are they in Norwegian Cruise Line before they can make that personal decision? It's very difficult for us to go in and make customized contracts because all these contracts are very rigid. A second engineer makes what a second engineer makes. It's not like the corporate world where you can have 10 financial managers and they all make different amounts. When in a position on a cruise ship, the levels of a position, they pretty much all make the same. So it's difficult to incentivize in that sort of scenario.
Right.
All right,
if I could talk,
sorry.
sorry,
Go ahead,
Aaron.
Colin.
Yeah, if I could talk a little bit about, I mean, you mentioned earlier about crowds and being on the ship, it's less crowded. And I just find it fascinating because, one of the biggest complaints that most people have on cruise ships is too crowded. But when I have gone on Regent before, it's never been crowded. I mean, it is ultra luxury. It doesn't feel like it's crowded right now. And you're saying it's going to be even less crowded, which I think that's great. And maybe because this is pretty cool. It's a point in time in history where you've now launched a community at sea. And it's different than a traditional cruise. It's different than a around the world cruise, where when you're on vacation, here you're going home every day when you go back to the ship. Can you just talk a little bit about the lifestyle differences between the residential cruise versus a world cruise? For example, you stop at ports, for instance, 3 to 5 days, and people can really connect. There's been some discussion in Live at Sea Facebook group about philanthropy and how people can make a difference. And I know you had the UNESCO designation, a type of UNESCO, but you had that a few days ago announced. Can you just talk a little bit about the community itself and the difference in lifestyle?
Yeah, certainly. So, I mean, you bring up a good point. People don't like crowds when they're on a cruise ship. But the real biggest complaint in the entire cruise industry is the amount of time spent in port. People hate, having to jump off the ship at 8 a.m. and be back on at 4 p.m. or 5 p.m. and sailing, hustling to the next port for the next morning's excursions. So most people that we talk to, their biggest attraction to a residential ship is that average of 3 days per port. You can really immerse yourself in the local culture, the local cuisine. You don't have to jump off the ship the moment it docks and worry about getting back in time before the ship leaves you. So that is the biggest draw that I've found. I mean, being able to sail with your own home, I would put a close second, but people really love the fact that you're not rushing from port to port. Even on your world cruises, and it doesn't matter if it's Cunard, if it's Regent, if it's Crystal, Silver Sea, any of the top cruise lines. Even on the world cruises, if you'd go on a 180-day world cruise, there may be 4 or 5 ports where you do one overnight. And the rest of the time is port to port to port. And that is what people really dislike about cruises. So,
Yeah,
All
and
right.
if I can add to that, some of the cool things that our current residents do is, for example, when we're 3 to 4 days, they stay at a luxury hotel for that time. And then it's almost like we're a launching pad for them, right? Oh, we're here now. Let's go out and let's venture out. And being in the middle of the city where they don't have to come back to the ship, they can experience it for 2 to 3 days and then come back to what they call home, right? Which is fantastic. And then another thing is, which is the absolute favorite, is you get to a port and you'll likely arrive at the same time as another ship. That other ship is rushing out, because they only got 8, 9 hours, whereas you're like, having coffee outside, your balcony and hey, waving, good luck. And you stroll out at 11, 12 o'clock in the afternoon, knowing that you have all day, all night, you plan dinner out, at port, it's a wonderful thing. And and this is what attracts people to this residential cruise line.
All right, so we're talking about ports, and I'm going to bring up probably the first major complaint we hear out there. Help me understand what is going on with you guys missing all these ports and having more sea days. I understand Australia has had issues with the animals on board, which from what I understand, Chris, they're not going to be pets on board. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay.
Who wants to take this on? I do.
Yeah, explain to me what's going on. Is this just a learning curve that you didn't know what you didn't know? Is this, help us out with what's going on?
Yeah, so you can start with that. So in comparison to traditional cruises, they have their region planned out, right? The most that they switch regions, let's say they'll be in the Caribbean for half the year, then they'll do a transatlantic, and then they'll be in, let's say, the Mediterranean the rest of the year, right? Those are two different regions, and they carry their own regulations. And you go in, and it's day in, day out. People the cruise line understands what those regulations are, what is required, etc. For us, it's a little bit different. We hop from region to region every 5 to 6 weeks. Okay. Where every country has a different regulation. So yes, as you said, you don't know what you don't know. And of course, we try to prepare, but you're learning things in real time, right? So you're arriving there, you're preparing, you have you think you have all your ducks in a row, and then all of a sudden, oh no, you can't do this, you can't do that. Especially with the cats, right? We don't know what ports don't allow cats. For example, Australia did allow it after we wrote a rigorous plan to say, okay, based on what your regulations are, this is our plan and how we plan to manage cats. And it must have been our port operations director, bless her. She wrote like a 15-page safety manual to show what we're doing about it. And, they review it and they approve it right before we get there. One of the stringent rules is that you have to be a big port to allow for the inspectors to come in and ensure that you're following those rules. And then you have to have a veterinarian that comes in and checks on the animals, make sure they're where they're supposed to be, and they're safe and they're healthy and they're not, all of these things, all of these checkpoints. So there's a lot of these small areas, these small ports that are underdeveloped, so they don't have the manpower to come in and do these things. So they just decline us altogether. So as much as we'd love to go into these small ports because our ship is small, and it's not a lot of ships can get into, we've had to cancel them because they're like, sorry, we can't handle the regulations as it's subscribed. So we've had a lot of changes, a lot of hiccups. Brazil was another one. We went through that, and then we learned, we can only spend a certain amount of days. We had to have a certain amount of crew, and we didn't find out until maybe 10 days before we were heading there. And again, our management company tries the best that they can, but you don't know what you don't know until you get there. So the beauty of this is, yes, it's been a rough road for us. The residents have been very flexible, because at the end of the day, the majority of them know that this is their home, and they're like, okay, we'll just go to the next port, just take us wherever you want. But by the time Lumina comes around, we would have already completed our first circumnavigation, which means we already have a cheat sheet for every region that we've been in. So we know what to expect, and we know, now we know that we can get into certain ports because we're not going to carry cats. So, it's been a learning curve, but I think, now with Avora, it's a whole new playing field because we know what the regulations are.
And it's not like there's a manual for this, right? Like there's not like there's been other.
We're writing our own playbook. How about that? This is, I don't think, the world is very guarded with how they handle their line, and with every right? We respect that. So coming in, 20 years later, we're writing our own playbook and saying, okay, this is how we're going to do it. So if we want to go fast, if we want to go slow, if we want to take 3 days to get there, if we want to spend 5 days, we should be able to have that flexibility because we don't have to follow a schedule that a 7-day cruise does, that a 14-day cruise does, right? That these people are coming on and off. These are people that are coming on board and spending their time, and they're happy to go wherever they want to go. So it's a much different playbook that a lot of people from the outside still don't understand, that we don't have to follow any rules.
All right, we've got a question from Penelope, and this is actually a great one because I'm not a drinker. Regarding the monthly fees, will there be any choice for people who don't drink alcohol, such as they pay a smaller monthly fee?
I think tracking that, Aaron, would be very problematic. But on, on an up note, it does include like specialty coffees, bottled waters, things of that nature. So they still have an opportunity to enjoy the unlimited beverages, and even if they choose not to indulge in the spirits or the beers or the wine, there's still opportunities to.
Truth be told, here, on a like a cruise, there tends to be significantly more drinking, more celebrations, more drinking hours than on a residential cruise. I mean, you look at Odyssey, it's very surprisingly little alcohol that's being drank on board. People live like they live at home. They don't necessarily drink more on board than they would drink at home. And so there are individuals that that do have drinks every day, but the majority of the residents don't have a daily drinking habit. A lot of people have a glass of wine for dinner, but that's about it. If you look at the average by person, I mean, we're talking 1 to 2 drinks. So it's not like we're pricing out a huge amount of monthly fees towards alcohol consumption.
Understood.
And,
all right.
Also, Aaron, I mean, like everybody uses different services in different ways, I presume, right? And I don't know, we didn't talk about this, but you have a spa, right? And you have a gym, and will there be any coaches, or classes, or any of those kind of things that would go along with a healthy lifestyle?
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. So the spa and gym areas, the gym area is not huge. We're looking at a way of expanding, freeing up some space for weights and yoga and so forth. The spa itself is very large. I think there's some opportunity to make some really neat things. We'll have a longevity program. We're looking at a longevity partner that'll actually run the health side of that business or of that cost center. But that hasn't been announced yet.
So Aaron, you can enjoy the spa and I'll enjoy the bar.
There you go. My wife will enjoy the spa. All right. So Susan asked, how are cabin purchase deposits and installments held? What are the escrow arrangements? And at what point do these funds become used for company expenses prior to launch?
Mike, you want to take that one?
Can you? I'm sorry, I was confused.
I think he froze.
Mike,
I think Mike is frozen.
Mike is frozen, so you might be answering this one. And same with
Kathy. And
too.
it looks like Kathy is too.
So are they on the Villa V right now?
No, they're not. They're not. They're at the office.
Let's call Elon. Elon, let's get your.
Yeah, the internet went down at the office. It looks like.
I'm a bit confused. So how are the cabin purchase deposits installments held? And what are the escrow arrangements? And what point do these funds become used for the company? So how are the funds deployed? Is the real question there, Chris?
Right. So the current contracts, we had a 10% down program that actually ended March 31st. But I think if somebody's on this call and they really wanted to take advantage of that, I think we could make some exceptions. So beginning yesterday, actually, we are at our standard deposit, which is 50%, and then 50% due 180 days before the ship sails. And The funds that are deposited, no, we do not use those funds up until we have reached our self-designated threshold of 20% of the ship sold out. Because that's when we know that we have enough residences to launch the ship, to convert the ship. We have enough sold to do that. And that's after our second deposit is made. So that's our, like I said, that's our self-imposed threshold. Once that's met, we are able to use deposits for operations, marketing, sales, payments on the ship.
And based on the research I've done so far and the article I wrote on liveatSea.com, it looks like there's a lot of momentum there, and to me it doesn't seem like a high bar to hit. Next question we have from Andrea. With the 5-year option, you have a 5-year option. Maybe you can explain that and the full purchase. And in the case of the 5-year option, are there limitations that are in place that would not be in place for a full purchase? Something like could you rent out the unit if you had a 5-year option? If you have 2 years left on your 5-year option, could you sell those 2 years? How does that differ? Like, what are the rights associated with the 5-year versus a life of vessel?
So the rights associated with the life of ship purchase are almost exactly the same as what's available with the 5-year purchase. The difference being that if you opt for the 5-year purchase, at the end of the 5 years, you do not have any equity. So you would either have to do another 5-year purchase the life of the ship, if you wanted to stay on board. So that's the main difference. Slightly higher monthly fees for a 5-year purchase. Couple of percent, I think, not much. And that's really the major difference. But yes, you can, if you have a 5-year purchase, you can allow your friends and family to use your residence. You can rent it out. You can sell the equity that's left in it, the amount of years left in it, if you like. And we do have the trade-in and the buyback program available for that as well, where those buybacks are prorated.
So can you explain that, since you brought it up?
So, for instance, in life of the ship, if we're looking at 15 years estimated, if you were, if after a year of sailing on the ship, your life changed, maybe you became ill, maybe maybe you just decided you wanted to live on land, whatever the reason may be, we have a buyback program in place. It would give you about 85% of your purchase back. The trade-in guarantee is for future ships. So when ship number 2 in the Avora fleet rolls out, if you decide, well, I like that itinerary better than the one that Lumina is currently on, then you can trade in for a residence on that ship as well. And again, prorated by the amount of years you've been on the Lumina.
Cool. Very cool. Aaron, I think you got the next question there.
Yeah, so sorry, I didn't write down who said this, but if sales stall at any point before launch, how will expenses be covered, including the regular purchase installments to NCL?
Well, that's the reason we have that self-imposed threshold of that 20% of sales. Because that tells us that our sales velocity is where it needs to be. It gives us enough money to complete the deposits on the ship before sailing, and gives us enough money to convert the ship. So that's why we have that self-imposed threshold.
You're talking about sales thresholds. You're about a month and a half in. Where are you guys at now? How many are under contract? How many are interested? What dollar figures that equal? Are you at your 20% or are you closer? Where you at? You're only a month and a half in, but
yeah, you're right. We announced the ship purchase back in March. We're at 25 under contract, and that includes 5 of our larger suites. And it's a phenomenon that we experienced on the Odyssey as well, where your lower end residences and then your larger suites tend to be the first to sell, and then the middle of the ship in your mid-size suites tends to be the last ones to sell. So, like I say, 20 of our non-large suites, 5 large suites. And then when we put something on hold, it's because we have a proposal out and or a contract. And the way that works is We send out a proposal. It's good for 7 days. Admittedly, if somebody comes back and says, Chris, we're still thinking about it. We need another week. We'll do that. At which point, when they give us the okay, we send them a contract. And they also have 7 days to review that. And again, sometimes, they request another week and we give it to them. So when you see something on hold, it's probably going to be on hold for somewhere between a week and 4 weeks. And currently on hold, we have 22 residences, including 7 of the larger suites again.
You said 25 under contract?
25 under contract and 22 total on hold. Because they're
And how
either
many?
at
There are
the
430? 430? How many are there?
260.
Okay, so you're at 10% under contract already.
Yes. Yeah.
And
if
under
you-
contract
if you-
means with deposits, correct?
Correct. And if you were to look
Okay.
at that dollar amount, it's probably, well, it would be more than 10% because so many of those are the larger suites.
Okay.
Yeah, and can you talk a little bit about pricing? I know, and there's like 7 questions lined up or queued up here. We might have to go a little over the hour, if that's okay, with the 3 of you. Welcome
It
back,
always
Cash.
does. It always does.
Right? Yeah. So can you just talk a little bit about pricing for these units? And by the way, again, like every unit on this ship is a suite. I think the smallest suite is 301 square feet, which if you look at cruise ship living, that's a pretty decent size, even for the smallest suite.
You're exactly right, Colin. The average cruise ship cabin is about 180 square feet. So for those of us that have been on cruises and spent 10, 14, 20 days in a cruise ship cabin, this is significantly different, significantly larger. Even the smallest suites have a walk-in closet, pretty rare on a ship as well. And they have full bathrooms, right? They have a separate shower and tub. The suites have
You
dual
say
van.
every suite has a tub?
Yes. Well, with the exception of the ADA
Okay.
approved suites. Yeah, those
Wow,
have
that's impressive. Yeah.
roll-in showers, right?
Wow.
Um,
So pricing, yeah. Sorry, I interrupted you.
right. So we don't have any interior residences on the ship because it is a luxury ship. So the window residences, and these are large windows. These are not portholes. These are large windows. Those start about $560,000, and those are on deck 5 and 6. The balcony residences start on deck 6 and go all the way to 11, and those run from about 850 on the lower decks to a little over $1 million on the upper decks. The 1-bedroom suites, our smallest 1-bedroom suite, which is our Solstice, starts at about 1.4 to 1.6, depending on the deck. And then we have larger suites that run about 2 million to 4.5 million.
Well, that's perfect for Aaron and his
The
ego.
4.5 million?
If you're giving me a loan, I'll take it. How will monthly maintenance change without full occupancy? This is a question from Jeffrey. So how will it change?
We built in, so we have a cash flow projection, and we're actually building into our cash flow projection that at launch in 2028 that will be 80% booked. At that point, our cash break even will be 35% booked. So I don't think we'll have any challenges with cash flow. Again, Norwegian is financing over 80% of the ship. So it's not like the Odyssey where we have to put all cash up front and pay for all the work and all the unknowns, right? We had to raise a significant amount of cash to get Odyssey where it needed to get out of Belfast, and we don't have any of that uncertainty here. So I think it's night and day compared to where we were, yeah, we're forecasting 80%. We'll have over $100 million in cash. We don't really see a challenge with cash as we did with the Odyssey.
We have one here from Andrea. Beyond the proration, what is Avora's buyback discount?
I don't even know what that means.
Yeah, I'm not certain. I think what she's saying is, so it's prorated if you do a buyback. Is there also so let's say you buy it, let's say you have a unit for, I don't know, it's supposed to be 15 years, use it for 5 years, you're giving up 10. So do you pay 66% back to the person, or is there a commission or some other fees that take place when you do the buyback?
Um, okay, so I don't know if we're mixing apples and oranges here. Odyssey has a buyback guarantee and a trade-in guarantee. If you, Kathy, if I don't know, you're muted, so I know you can't speak, but maybe they can
Can you
unmute you,
unmute?
There you go.
and then Kathy can explain what the Lumina contract specifies to if there is a buyback and trading guarantee, and what the difference is to Odyssey. But I don't have that in front of me.
I tried to look it up as quickly as I could, but based on the contract, Chris, you want to take a crack at it since you've been working on it?
Yeah, so the trade-in is obviously a much higher return than the buyback.
Right.
So on the trade-in, year one, it's 100% of what you paid for the residence. 1 to 2 years is 95. And then it basically goes down about 5% a year after that.
Right.
For the buyback guarantee, since we're having to come up with um, cash to pay you off for your residence, it's a lower rate. So 1 year, 60%, 2 years, 55. And again, it's a sliding scale of about 5% a year after that.
Okay,
Similar
but am I
to,
correct to say that you can still sell the unit though,
Yes,
like
yeah,
to a third party? You don't have to sell it back to Lumina, right?
correct.
that's right.
And and in that scenario, will you help facilitate that sale and take a commission?
Yeah,
Yeah, we have such a long time horizon before we launch. We're pretty confident that we are going to be either sold out or very close to it. So there won't be residents available through us. So it'll be the resale market people will have to go to if they want to buy on board. And I'm sure we're going to have a wait list of people that are looking to buy something. So yeah, if somebody comes to us and says, Chris, I've loved my year on here, my 2 years on the ship, whatever it is, but I think I'm going to head back to land, we would certainly help them.
Right. And if I can make just clear something up, this only applies to the lifetime. The 5 year is not included.
Got it. Okay. And that's interesting that there have been stories that people who bought units on the World when it first launched, which is by the way the same age um, ship, that they've actually the prices have gone up substantially. And I'm not
No.
suggesting that's going to happen in this situation. I'm just, in the research that I've done in regards to the World, the prices did go up substantially. All right. So next question. From Andrea, how will future monthly fees be determined? Like, first of all, what are the monthly fees for these units, right? You mentioned those suites, the 301 square foot suites, what are the monthly fees roughly? You don't have to give exact here, but, and then for the larger ones, and then how are they determined in the future? Like, can you just double the fees, or like, how does that work?
So, good question. And so we have two separate fees on board the ship. We have the maintenance fee, which is based upon the square footage of your residence, right? Your food and beverage and port charges are based upon the number of people in your residence. So there's a fee for one person, there's a fee for two people. Basically, it's $3,000 a month for single occupancy, and then $6,000 a month for double occupancy. And that's all your fees. You've got the maintenance and you've got your food and beverage and port charges tied together. The maintenance fee started about $5,100. So for that particular residence, a solo traveler, solo resident would be about $8,100 a month. And then for a couple, it would be about 11,000 and change per month.
Yeah, these fees seem high, but again, personal experience. I'm just going to share a personal experience that I had on Regent Cruise. Like I booked a a room, it was about 568 square feet, and it was $5,400 a night. Now it's a luxury ship, it's a luxury cruise. I'm not suggesting that this is going to be the rental rate in any way in the situation in this particular ship, but when you're into an ultra luxury, the fees do tend to be higher, and um, you know, and in some ways, I feel like because there was another operator who tried to get the ship earlier, the fees that they'd come out with were much higher, and you know, maybe this is a secondary question: is that you know, how is it that you're able to do it for such low fees, even though they may seem high for some people for an ultra luxury ship? But how are you able to? What are the services that you're going to lose that they currently have on the ship?
Yeah, it's
So
not a question of services, Colin. So Crescent Seas was going to buy the ship, and they were basically going to redo every inch of the ship. They were going to put a lot of money into the ship. They also were going to spend a lot more on the acquisition of the ship than we are, because Mike did cut such a great deal. Um, but from a service standpoint, not a huge difference, right? There's not going to be a decrease in amenities. There's not going to be a decrease in food quality. It's more a question of upfront capital that we don't need to spend. So we don't need to charge as much per month. We don't look at the monthly fees or even the food and beverage and port charges as a profit center. We've estimated them to be very equal, very close to what our actual expenses are going to be.
So
And
to build on that, Chris, so Crescent Seas had a very similar itinerary to what Navigator is doing to 14 months around the world. Um, More hurried, significantly more fuel cost, more port cost. Um, that's not what we're doing. They used Norwegian's estimates all the way around, um, meaning the turnaround work. So we already know what it takes to man a ship, to operate a ship. The and we were able to create a budget, the actual budget for this sort of operation. Um, if you look at the total cost of the ship, they were looking at a $210 million all-in spend, whereas we're looking at a $125 million all-in spend. So we're able to save 40%, and we're able to uh, uh, basically forward that savings to the residents. So um, the reason that we're cheaper on the purchase price is just the direct correlation to the fact that we got a better deal, and we're not taking us an aggressive stand that's putting kitchens in every room, um, and um, and then having the actual expenses as opposed to relying on Norwegian's variable costs. We know what the variable costs are, and we're able to mitigate them.
Yeah, and do you really need turn down service? I'm just throwing this out there. Is that something, for
No,
example, that I mean, do you have at your own home? Do you have somebody coming into your bedroom at 6 o'clock at night while you're having dinner and doing a turn down? Like, I don't know.
if
Am I
you
onto something there?
if you want it, we certainly will have cleanings every day. Most don't, and so we would expect you have to have room cleanings 2 to 3 days a week. If you want it every day, you certainly have that, but there's certainly be less. And the turnaround ports that cruises do every week require significant manpower. We're talking the rooms have to be completely redone, overhauled, often repaired, right? There's a lot of things that happens in the course of a cruise where um, passengers don't take care of things as much, and there needs to be repairs every turnaround. That takes significant manpower, not just from a hotel, but a technical perspective. We don't deal with that. Residents take much better care of their cabins, and it's a completely different product. And so the personnel on board is going to be reduced, not through cutting service, but just through the nature of what what the product is. It's just different.
You're up,
All
Aaron.
right, I will go on with the next one. So going back to the question about the threshold, Susan's asking, is the 20%, is it based on the value of the cabins or the quantity of the cabins?
So we've put a threshold on the number of cabins. It's an internal financial responsibility threshold that we've set for ourselves. Yeah, and we're sticking with that. Our goal is to meet that threshold by August, but I can almost guarantee that we're going to meet that threshold in April, certainly no later than May. So it's not really something that I'm too concerned about.
Okay. And is there so I'm asking this question they didn't ask. All right, so let's suppose, I think Chris had told me July 31st is your go, no-go date. I don't know if that's
It's
same
been pushed.
Okay.
It's 6 months from the time we actually signed, which was
March 3rd.
Right, March 3rd.
So at that end of the day, at the go, no-go date, if you guys obviously decide not to move forward, which sounds like you're almost there anyways, all the money would be refundable, correct? Would be refunded. And until that time, the money's not held in escrow or anything of that sort. It's just sitting in your bank account, correct?
We self-escrow, yeah, that's correct.
Okay.
Just like we did with Odyssey. It's the same thing.
I know we got another question here. We know we don't have much time left, and we really appreciate the absolute transparency and direct answers. And this is refreshing because I've already put down on 2 deposits, and those projects didn't work out. And it's just really refreshing what you and your team are doing here. So next question from Jeffrey is medical included, or are there fees for seeing the doctor?
There are fees for seeing the doctor, but they are minimal. I mean, they are nothing like you would encounter in a hospital in the United States. That's the day-to-day stuff. For the major stuff, we always recommend that the residents have international health insurance in case they need to go to a hospital on shore, or God forbid, they need to be airlifted from the ship, which can be very expensive. We always recommend that they have international travel insurance, and it's relatively inexpensive, actually.
And I guess I assume that there is going to be a doctor on board, 24 hours.
Sure. Yeah, we'll have a doctor and 2 RNs on board.
And that's the case with the Villa V too. You have a doctor on board.
Yes.
Oh wow.
We outsource. We have a third party vendor who handles kind of like a management company, but for medical specifically. And we have a doctor and 2 nurses on board at all times.
So I have another question. Will Odyssey and Lumina be doing the same course, or will they be doing different courses?
They'll be different. They'll be different. So when Lumina launches out of Lisbon, it's going to head to Florida. We're going to have the 2 ships in Fort Lauderdale at the same time, and big celebration, party, fireworks, all that stuff.
All right, so
fireworks.
I'm going to go back to the doctor question, because Jeffrey did say that he saw the doctor on the Navigator, and it was $900, which is, so you're not going to be that high, right?
So
No.
So it's all about how it's managed, and we're able to set the pricing ourselves. So because it's a residential cruise line, it's somewhat revenue driven, but not as aggressive as, let's say, a traditional cruise line. They mark up their prices 200% and 300%. And they make a lot, they make a lot of money. That's just the way it is if you use them. For us, it's a little bit different. Our residents, as we experience on the Odyssey, they come often. They want to check their blood pressure. They want to know where their cholesterol's at. You tend to, especially in the beginning, when you first board, you're going to see there's going to be a little bit of overindulgence. So you're going to have to watch yourself until you get acclimated to the fact that you're actually a resident sailing, and that all of these things are available to you at all times. So the doctor's going to be very busy in the beginning, trying to get you to slow down on the cookies and on the wine, and but as 6 months rolls around, everything dies down. You kind of hit the norm. But it's much different. It's much different. You know, on the Odyssey, the doctors know the residents by name, you know, and they know their health profile. So we encourage the residents to see the doctor and let them know, you know, what kind of prescriptions they have, or what kind of, you know, what their health profile is, so that, you know, they can help them out and stay healthy.
All right, so I have another question. We talked about one of the complaints I've been hearing about the Odyssey is the food. All right, will the food quality be different on the Navigator?
Yes. Yes, in the sense of, you know, we're gonna, you know, it's a different topic, but we will be making changes on the Odyssey. But Odyssey is a contemporary line, and so we strive to have 3 to 3.5 star, both quality, service, and all around experience. Lumina is intentionally going to be luxury, and so we will aim for that 5 star, and if possible 6 star. And that's why we want to ensure that we retain the management company that's currently there, because we want to keep those standards that are currently on Regent.
And will there be fees for the specialty restaurants on board, or is that included?
We're not going to go with a specialty restaurant, so no fees.
So there's going to be multiple places to dine other than, you know, well, you know, I guess right now there are specialty restaurants on board. Are you going to keep that space as maybe Asian food, where if we don't want to eat in the main dining room, we can go get sushi there? Or is it?
We don't want to commit to anything right now, because we're
Okay.
still in the, you know, we want to be able to create certain spaces, right? And so we're just getting acclimated to the spaces that we have. You know, we have a buffet, we have a restaurant, and then there's another restaurant within a restaurant, and then we have a grill out back. You know, we have different locations, and we still want to, you know, get a feel for the type of residents that we're getting and what they would like to see. And so I would hate to say this is our idea and then change it midway.
Yeah. And the only specialty restaurant on board now is the steakhouse. If we did
Okay.
decide not to go with the steakhouse because there just wasn't enough demand for it, we would move that menu down to the main dining room. So those food options would be available. It just wouldn't be a separate restaurant.
Well, I know we've pushed the boundaries of time here, Aaron,
Yep.
and really appreciate that. How do people, if they're interested in buying a unit or getting a 5-year rental or whatever you call it, how do they get in contact with you? What's the next step?
So you can reach me directly. Chris.
Call Chris.
What's that?
I said, call Chris.
Oh, Chris. Yes.
Chris.
Call, or better yet, email me. But yeah, chris.cox at avoraresidences.com.
So chris.cox@avoraresidence.com.
Correct.
And well, I can't tell you how much I appreciate how open and transparent, you know, you as the leaders and the owners of the Villa V and now the Lumina have during this call. It is really impressive, and I think people in the community appreciate that transparency.
Thank you. Thank you. And thank you for having us.
Yeah,
Thank
thanks
you.
for setting this all up. Aaron, thank you as well.
Our pleasure. Thank you, guys.
Thank you for joining us, everyone.
All right, take care.
Thank you, and we'll see you on liveatc.com and the Facebook group.